Hello there. So today's topic of discussion is meat speciation and the species identification. Till now, the consumers that were purchasing the meat were much more concerned about the total protein that is present in the meat and the balance of the amino acid that is present in the meat. But nowadays, the consumers are more aware and they want to know even the origin of the meat. Why this is so? Because the consumption of the meat having mislabeled flesh will be resulting into the allergy in the sensitized individual, and secondly it will be also hurting the host or the people's religion sentiment. I would like to tell you the definition of the adulteration. It is nothing but a fraudulent practice or a wrong practice which involves the substitution or mixing of the flesh of cheaper variety which is objectionable for reason of health, religion and economic. And such adulteration which is objectionable in terms of health, religion, and economics will be punishable under PFA Act, which is Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1973. Now, for the meat speciation, we are having different methods, that is physical method, chemical method, biochemical method, immunological method or serological method, then novel method, among which the physical and the chemical method will be having a few limitations. What are those is they cannot be employed on the minced meat, which means the meat which is finely chopped or cut with the knife into very small pieces, and then lean meat and the mixture of the meat having close indices, and in boiled, cooked or the processed meat, the physical and the chemical method can't be used for the meat speciation. Let me discuss with you the first type of the meat speciation, which will be based on the anatomic, that is anatomical meat speciation, in which you can identify the different meat based on the color, texture and the odor of the meat. For example, these are some important points you have to remember. In the buffalo, the color of the meat it is brick red. In the cattle, the color of the meat it is light red. In the sheep, it will be having a peculiar ammonical odor, and in the goat it will having a goaty odor, and in the case of pig it will be having a urine odor. In the goat, the goaty odor will be present mainly in the male goat. Then in the anatomical meat speciation itself, we can identify the species of which the meat is by the osseous tissues like the bones and the cartilage. For example, the poultry meat will be having smaller and the softer bone compared to that of the others. Then among the anatomical meat speciation itself, we can even do the speciation of meat based on the color consistency and the distribution of the fat in that meat. The cattle fat will be yellowish in color, and the buffalo fat is also is whitish in color. The buffalo fat and the cattle fat will be having marbling. What is this marbling? It is nothing but uniform distribution of the fat, and it will be intermixed with that of the flesh. Then sheep will be having more amount of the marbling compared to that of the cattle and the buffalo. Then in the case of pig, it will be having an abundant subcutaneous fat, but this fat is not marbled with that of flesh, or it is not intermixed with that of flesh. This was all about the anatomical meat speciation. The next thing we will be discussing is physical method of meat speciation, among which there are two types, that is based on the refractive index and secondly based on the iodine value. First, based on the refractive index, we will extract the fat from the meat and we will liquefy it, and the refractive index of the oil will be measured in the refractometer. The refractometer value for that oil will be different. That is nothing but the refractive index for each species will be different. The horse will be having 53.5, cattle will not have more than 40, pig will not have more than 51.9. Then second method of the physical method of meat speciation is iodine value. iodine value is calculated based on the amount of the iodine that is absorbed by the unsaturated fatty acid present in the fat of the animal. In the lion region, the iodine value you will get around 71 to 86. In the cattle, you will get up to 38 to 46. In the sheep, 35 to 46. In the pig, you will get around 50 to 70. The next method of the meat speciation, it is chemical method. Now what happens in chemical method? We are generally looking for the presence or the absence of the chemical constituent in the meat or its quantity. Generally there are two methods in the chemical method, that is glycogen and the linoleic acid concentration we are generally looking for the meat speciation. Meat the chemical method, it is not much popular. Why this is so? Because the chemicals are not species specific. They can even react with the chemical agents that are having similar type of the reactivity, and it is time consuming and even exhausting. As I said you, among the chemical method of the meat speciation, we will do it based on the glycogen content and the linoleic acid. Firstly, going on to the glycogen, the horse flesh will be having the higher amount of the glycogen, but you can't take it for granted, because if you are going to slaughter a exhausted horse, then it will be having the lower level of the glycogen and you will get the false results. And in the case of linoleic acid, the horse fat will be having 1 to 2% of the linoleic acid, and all the other animal will be having less than 0.1% linoleic acid in their meat. The next method of the meat speciation, it is biochemical method. In the biochemical method, we will be going for the electrophoresis. Electrophoresis of what? We will be going for electrophoresis of meat, organ extract, and even the biological matter. Then we will separate the various amount types of the proteins, and the separated protein fragments or the fractions are very much species specific. Now among the biochemical method, we will be using the electrophoresis technology. We are having two types there: isoelectric focusing and STS page. Now in the isoelectric focusing, uh, let me give you the definition first of the what is protein. Protein, it is nothing but having the lower or higher molecular weight. It can be acidic or it can be alkaline in nature, and the proteins are always negatively charged, and they will be having a specific pH at which their overall electric charge will be becoming zero, and that point will be known as the isoelectric point at which these protein will be precipitating. Okay. And when you will be transferring the protein on the agarose gel or the polyacrylamide electrophoresis, that is also known as page, or the agarose gel, and you will be adding the amphoteric buffer having the specific pH range, when the protein will be precipitating at the respective isoelectric points, and this will be very much specific to the species of the animal. Okay, here you are using the pH and the electric charge. You are using the isoelectric point of that protein for the species, uh, for identifying the species of the animal. Then second method among the biochemical method is SDS page, in which you will be making the overall charge of the protein zero. Here the protein will be getting separated on the electrophoresis or the agarose gel based on the molecular weight. When the overall charge of the protein will become zero, when you will going to treat that protein with the STS. What is STS? It is nothing but a detergent which will be denaturating the protein. Now the protein is allowed to migrate on that page or the agarose gel, and the precipitation will be occurring based on the molecular weight. Then the band will be forming. After formation of band, you will do destaining, then densometric scanning, then the band pattern of the tissue from the different animal will be varying, and that will give you the meat speciation. However, even this method has its own constraint. It enables you to differentiate between raw and partially heated meat, but not for the cooked and the processed meat. Okay. Then the fifth type of the meat speciation is immunological or serological method. As you will be knowing from the microbiology that when you add antigen, a specific antibody will be produced in the host and which will be demonstrated in the serum. Okay, if you are doing this same kind of the thing in vitro, that is outside the body, then you will be getting different reactions, that is flocculation, precipitation, agglutination, cytolysis and neutralization. Then when coming into the meat speciation, how this is related, the raw meat will be acting as an antigen and it will be incorporated into the rabbit or sheep in which the antibodies will be produced. The greater drawback, you know what it is nothing but the occurrence of the cross reaction with a similar protein, which makes differentiation of the phylogenetically related species difficult. For example, sheep and goat are there, they are phylogenetically related species. Now the differentiation of those two meat will be very much difficult because of the cross reaction of the similar type of the protein. And now the cooked meat are not identifiable by the immunological or serological method. To overcome this drawback, what we have to do is we have to collect the uh, we have to collect we use the adrenal gland for the antibody production. Okay, the antigen will be having the true fractions, that is adrenal specific and the organ specific. Because of these two fractions, the species specific, that is what the adrenal gland, which will be acting as an antigen, which will be responsible for the antibody production in the host. Now the adrenal gland will be having the acting as an antigen, will be having true fractions, that is adrenal specific and organ specific. And the the antigenic fraction will be species specific, and they will be resistant to the boiling temperature and the ethanol precipitability. Therefore the adrenal gland, which is acting as an antigen, is also known as the PE antigen. And the antisera that has been developed either in the rabbit or the sheep, that is nothing but which will develop after the incorporation of the antigen into the rabbit or sheep, which will be the cross reacting antibody can be said. I said you it is a drawback there. The cross reacting antibody can be removed by immunoabsorption. After removing such cross reacting antibody, you will be left out with the monospecific antisera. Now this such monospecific antisera will be used for the identifying tissue, organ, biological fluid, semi-cooked and the cooked or processed type of the meat. And the last method of the meat speciation, it is the novel method, that is nothing but polymerase chain reaction. Thank you.